So right here, I am Aether Star. I've been playing FF14 since the release of Stormblood, on and off, and I got my boy Heloise here. Goes by Hello for short. He's been playing since post Heaven's Ward in FF14, and he's gotten a lot of experience under his belt. He's been doing all the Savage content when they release, has clears on each of the ultimate rays. On his character right here, you can see that he has the Coils of Baja sword and the shield from Alexander for Paladin. And you can start speaking right now. Hello, you tell everyone how you feel about all these accomplishments and all the stuff you've done, since you started playing the game.
The game's fun. I have way too many hours in it. That's all I have to say.
The game is very fun, yes, and he's definitely looking forward to whenever they decide to put out the Dragon Song Ultimate. It's going to be a fun time for you, I'm pretty sure, when it comes to all that prog.
Yes, Thornton is still my favorite fight in the game, so I've been waiting for him to get an ultimate.
And it's just insane, right? We are basically on the eve of Endwalker coming out. We're actually doing this little chat roughly 4 hours before we go into maintenance. And it's just pretty crazy, right? Like, we are getting the ending of our first story arc. And it's going to say a lot for just what's going to happen. Because to me, I never thought about Hydaelyn versus Zodiac coming to an actual end, especially this soon. I thought we would just keep going on with it. I never thought they would just say, all right, listen, we're gonna finish this up and go to something else. So how do you feel about that for FF's story? Because to me, it felt like we were going to just have this thing where it would be kind of like any other regular anime shonen, where we have our first arc, the arc is over, and then we deal with a new bad guy with their whole new arc, and then we're just going to continue in that fashion. So how do you think of that in the context of 14 storyline?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like surreal to think about, I guess, because like I did see an article like a week or two ago that said like they still have plans for another 10 years of the game at least. And it kind of throws me off because this game since inception has always been about like the Hydaelyn Zodiac thing. So I was pretty much in the same camp as you, where I just thought it would essentially just go on forever. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that can go on forever. But I guess once we started actually getting into the Unsundered, like with La Habrea and Emmett and Litibus, like I guess at some point we kind of had to hit this end because they were going to run out of main villains because everyone else was already dead. So they kind of needed to. But yeah, I guess the weirdest thing for me is I just don't know what they're going to do from here. Because it just seems like this is definitely the apex of the story. I mean, it is the apex of the story with Hydaelyn and Zodiac, but it just feels weird to think of what they could even do after this. Because, I mean, are they gonna make a Realm Reborn 2 or something where they just use the game?
It's one of those things that just kind of makes you wonder. Especially when we consider where we're at in the story right now too, right? Because where we're left off in the story is that we are, done with everything in the first, and now we're going back into the source, and in the source we're basically dealing with the loose ends of everything when you think about it, right? Because all these people that have caused so many problems for the Scions, they're all basically dead or gone, with the exception of Xenos and Fandaniel, another Ascian. The Sundered, no, I should say the Unsundered are gone. And all we have left from the Ascian camp, at least as far as I can see, is just Fandaniel. And then we have Xenos, who's, also left from Garland. So to me, it feels like part of the reason why they have to go into Endwalker is that we have to tie up these loose ends with what's left of these two villain camps. You know, in the case of
Mm.
Garlemald as Xenos, and for the Ascians as Fandaniel, and
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy to me when you think about how many Ascians we face as a main character, and we just see that, at least as far as I can tell, right, that Fandaniel seems to be the last one standing, right? Or at least the one that decides to make an appearance and actually say something about what we've been doing to them. So
Yeah.
it's been
I mean,
pretty something.
The thing about it is I feel like they could bring in more, because like I don't think Fandaniel was even really a thing until what, like the start of like Shadowbringers, like late Stormblood or something. Like I don't remember him being mentioned beforehand. Like maybe he was like in some off text or something, but I pretty much just remembered like the three Unsundered for like the longest time.
They're basically the main threats, right? It's like when I was looking at the Ascians in context, it was just their main bosses was Laha, Elidibus, Emmet. You know, Emmet standing above them in the shadows as Soulless, and then everything else under them was just fanatics in a sense, right? Of that they decide to turn into lesser Ascians, and you know, you have some people that get mentioned eventually, right? Later on, like Mitron, Logriff, who was Gaia. We had Eaglehorn, you know, back when she died. Well, we killed her as the main character, but like in front of Laha, and then Laha got killed by Thorium.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess there could be more, but this is something I kind of wanted to bring up like earlier too. But one thing that I'm kind of fearful for with the story is because another thing I thought about that they could have done like after this, like before I knew Endwalker was a thing, but just knowing the end of Shadowbringers, is I thought maybe we would like visit the other stars, because I know like I think one or two of them already got destroyed or something, or like heavily messed up or something. But I know we visited the first, so I was wondering if like maybe we would find other threats like on other stars. But the thing that worries me about that is I feel like if they get rid of like the Highland and Zodiac storyline, will that even like matter anymore? Like, are they like, I don't know. I just don't know where they're gonna go after
right.
this. Like,
I
that's
get what
I'm
you're
most
saying.
curious
So
about.
in response to what you're saying, yeah, there are some worlds that are destroyed in the concept of the story. Like they mentioned this before, but it's very easy to overlook or forget about. But they basically said that. So we have the source and 13 reflections. So out of those reflections, 7 of them got bodied. You know.
Yeah.
and one of the ones that did get bodied was the 13th, which in the context of our story is where all the voice scent comes from. Like in that world, that's the world that got consumed by a flood of darkness. Kind of the opposite of what happened to the first with the flood of light. So basically, if Mythilia didn't stop the flood of light, then what would have happened is the first would basically be just the opposite of the 13th, where it would just be a bunch of evil like creatures, and probably the same shit would happen where you have people from the source trying to summon them for power or whatever kind of fanatical schemes that they have. You know, we've seen all types of crazy shit when it comes to voice set and how they get used in the source.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess another thing that I'm kind of curious what your thoughts about is I guess it's like a two-part question.
Yeah,
so first, do you think that we'll actually like beat Zodiac, or we'll beat Heidelin at the end?
Oh, so when it comes to that, I feel like in the context of the story, and when I'm saying it's a conclusion to their arc, I feel like we can go either one or two ways. One way is we destroy Zodiac, and with Zodiac gone, Heidelin just goes, okay, since Zodiac and the threat of him coming is gone and eliminated, I will use what's left of my strength to save the source from reliving the final days. Is what I think could happen. Another thing that can happen is this is how I'm expecting Endwalker to go. I'm probably gonna be wrong, but the way I'm thinking about it is that because everything is with the context of Xenos. Because all this shit wouldn't go down if Xenos didn't just want to fight the Warrior of Light. I think what's going to happen, and I think the direction that Fan Daniel is probably going to try to steer him towards, is that Zodiark gets summoned, but he doesn't get summoned as the actual complete Zodiark. I think what's going to happen is that it'll be just a primal summoning with Xenos turning himself into Zodiark, kind of like how when Isael or Thornton summon their primal versions, with it being Shiva and King Thornton. I think the same thing's going to happen here with Xenos being Zodiark, and he's just going to be like, I can finally have the best fight that I could ever ask for against the Warrior of Light. And then us, we might either be empowered by Hydaelyn in some way, or just go about that as to be the final battle.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. I can see that too.
But then alongside that, though, there's the other aspect of the fact that the Yoshida and all the other, dev members have mentioned that going into Endwalker, we are going to see the foundations of what will come after. So I'm assuming what's going to happen is right when we get towards the conclusion of Endwalker, we're going to start to see these new threats that are going to come up, and then they're going to elaborate upon in the post-Endwalker patches whenever those get released. And I think what's going to end up happening, as far as just the story itself, is that something is going to happen that's going to end up making us having to explore outside of the source. And when I say explore outside the source, I don't mean visiting another reflection like you suggested. I think the one reason why they would avoid that is because they basically can't do a copy of Shadowbringers, right? Because that's what happens if you try to go down that path, is you risk just copy and pasting what you did with Shadowbringers. So I think what they're going to end up doing is that they're going to end up going into space. And the reason why they're going to end up going into space is because out there is where Omega was traveling through. Back when, you do all the Omega quests, you see how Omega was traveling from planet to planet in Forest Creator. So what's going to happen is we're probably going to end up learning what race created Omega, as well as how that ties into Midgard's Summer. Because remember, he also flew in here from another planet as well. So we might see something crazy like... So you know how the Alligans basically use the dragons as prisoners for their own doing and all this stuff, right? We're probably going to see that, but in the context of it being just the whole entire race being enslaved on another planet by the creators of Omega for, whatever reason as we go there. And then maybe they might do something crazy like, oh, we're going to liberate the dragons from this big creator race that's probably technologically superior to us, because they're going to probably do something that threatens Hydaelyn itself.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that too. Like, I could definitely see the space stuff, because I think, like, for one thing, like, we already have at least some type of transportation into the sky, like into space now. And I another thing that I think is interesting about the space theory is like the other worlders or whatever, like, that helped cause the end of the Asians. Like, we still don't really know where exactly they came from, or like why they have the power to like send the creation magic like out of whack. Like, I remember at some point, my memory's kind of hazy on that part, but I remember they said like there was like a sound or something, and the sound like caused, their creation magic to go like crazy. But then there were like all these beasts that like invaded outside, and that's like the type of beast that you fight, like, in the Walker trailer. Yeah, that too. And Amrot, like, I don't think those dudes are just chilling on the moon. So they must come from somewhere.
Because, like, one, they keep it kind of vague, and two, they also are basically giving it to us from Emmett's perspective, because even Emmett didn't know what was happening or what caused it. Yeah. It makes me wonder if it was something natural that the planet does, or something else was at work to cause it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my opinion, I think it's the space theory because it's like even in the Amarot dungeon, like you see like a lot of spatial imagery, especially towards the end of it. Like
Oh
you
yeah,
see like
when you fight the boss of the dungeon, right? And you're kind of
yeah.
on that like platform in space.
Yeah. So I definitely think it could be possible that they came
Dude,
from
this game is
space.
so good, dude. Like people would see shit like that and would think that it's just to look cool, but then you look back on you're like, wait, this actually kind of ties into all the space shit that we're going into at the moon and all that stuff, and then and it kind of gets even crazier too, right? Because when you think about the moon, the first thing you kind of think about was how before Eorzea used to have two moons, right? Because they thought the other moon was an actual moon. It turns out it was just Bahamut in the cage, and it kind of makes you wonder if there's any other alien stuff up there since they were able to put a whole ass fake moon up in the sky.
There has to be somebody was up there because we know at least from some of the screenshots that there's like a tower up there.
Yeah.
And I sincerely doubt we're building that tower.
And one thing to know about the Alligans too is that they're basically controlled in the shadows by the Axians. So that means if there's something Alligan up there, then that means they were probably using it for, whatever business that they had. And it's just going to be very interesting just to see where the story goes with Endwalker, because aside from like all these predictions on where they can go after Endwalker, I'm honestly just going to be very surprised to see what they do in regards to Heidelin versus Zodiac. Are they gonna live? Are they gonna die? Are they just going to be well, one thing I was thinking about a kind of tie situation where it's like they both survive and they're like kind of relevant, but not in the sense that they're like trying to beat each other or one is trying to be resurrected to defeat the other kind of situation.
Yeah, so that was actually the second part of my question from before. Is I was going to ask you if one or both of them were destroyed, what do you think would happen? Because I feel like in a way, and I've said this to other people before, but I feel like in a way we almost can't beat Zodiac, because if we do,
the balance gets fucked, right? And then we go into the situation of the first where Flood of Light.
Yeah, so it's like, and I feel like it would be even more drastic than that because they control like kind of everything in general.
Yeah, so. And that's another thing to think about is, what is meant by the balance of the worlds with keeping light and dark in check, because you can't have light win because then, the first happens. You can't let dark win because then the 13th happens. So then is it just a thing where they just say, after beating them, do we just get rid of the Warrior of Light itself to check the balance of things, or
I mean, see, that's one of those things that it almost like doesn't work in this game if you do that though, because like
because we're the Warrior of Light.
Yeah, because like that kind of works in like other games, like single player games, because they can always like once you beat the final boss, if they want to do something like that, they can just take you back to like before the checkpoint,
Right,
but like since this is like an ongoing MMO, like I feel like they can't just take you out because like you wouldn't be able to play the game after that.
Yep. And I think one thing to take note of as well is the fact that, well, I think what could happen to make sure the balance doesn't get tipped is that maybe instead of getting rid of Zodiac, they kind of just put him in stasis, kind of like what the Alligans did with Bahamut, so that he still exists but he can't do anything. But the fact that he exists means that the balance doesn't get fucked, so they just roll with that. I feel like that could be something they might end up doing.
Another thing they could do is I don't know how much this would affect things, but they've been building up a lot in Endwalker, or sorry, not in Endwalker, in Shadowbringers, about like untempering and stuff. So I think it's like it's very highly speculated, if not already confirmed somewhere, that like we're probably tempered by Heidelin,
right? Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too.
So I'm wondering if maybe if by the end of Endwalker, if we're just able to stop all tempering on our side and all tempering on Zodiac's side, if they just kind of like, go away and just do their own stuff and just keep balance that way.
That's a great point to make up, and it kind of makes me wonder if something will happen with us and Alice, where Alice just goes, "Can I have my Porsche? Can I have my Porsche?" Or in her case, Angelo then name the portion look at us and see if we are tempered, right, and then have Angela do their thing and see if it actually affects us or not. I think that would be cool to see.
Yeah, because I feel like I feel like one of the reasons why things are tipping so like weirdly in Hyland's favor is because we're too strong with her tempering. But I feel like if you got rid of our tempering, then she kind of like she loses that champion, So we're just.
Well, I mean, remember, it's weird to say that because that's basically what happened in Heaven's Ward, right? Remember when we had Midgar Silver? He takes away the echo from us, and then he's like, "Oh shit, we're still kind of good," even without the echo.
I guess that's true. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, in that case, so that was him basically seeing if we were like worthy to have it, but then it's like, echo aside, we ran into that situation where it was us against light in the case of the light wardens and absorbing their light / ether, and then we saw that it was too much for us after the very last one. So that kind of shows that there's a limit to her blessing in a sense, in cases like that. And even with that, you also gotta remember how in the Exarch's timeline, we died in that timeline. And the reason why we died to that timeline was because of the Black Rose. So it's like, it's those things that kind of shows that how there's a limit to Hydaelyn's power and protection against certain things. But it is cool to think of that, though. I think it kind of makes us lean into thinking, what are we expecting of Endwalker, both in terms of, that story perspective, but also the quality, right? What are these dungeons going to be looking like? What are the primal fights going to be looking like? Are we going to get some new mechanics thrown in there, or is it going to be kind of the same old, just with a bit of more HQ finish to it to make it a bit more fun? What were your thoughts on how you think that's going to go in terms of the dungeons and the trials and the content itself?
It's probably gonna be the same. I mean, it's gonna be good. I'm sure it'll be fun, but it's probably gonna be the same stuff. I don't think it's gonna change too
all right,
drastically.
So when it comes to that, when just the quality, right? How would you say the quality of the game was if you compare the content that Shadowbringer gave us to the content that Stormblood gave us? Would you say Shadowbringers was a step up content-wise or a step down?
I don't know, actually. I feel like, I don't know, some of the stuff like straight up just blurs together for me now. Like,
well, let me jog your memory a bit better. Think of it like, in Stormblood we had Omega Savage, and then we also had the trials and the four lures trials and their extreme trials, and then Ultimates dropped too. I believe that was both UCOD and Ultima Weapon, right?
Yeah, it was both of them.
And then in Shadowbringers we had the Epic of Alexander, Eden, and then the extreme trials from the Shadows of Warlight, and also the extreme trials from MSQ like Sea of Sacrifice and all that stuff. So how do you think the Shadowbringers content compares with the Omega, with the Stormblood content, Ultimates aside?
Honestly, I don't really know, because like I feel like they're really, like, besides, like, as long as you take out difficulty wise, I feel like their game plan with how they do fights and like their presentation is like really top notch. Because I think of stuff like now, like how we got Innocence at the start of this, but then I think about like Susano at the start of Stormblood, and I'm like, it was still really good back then too. So I don't know. I mean, I think I will say I feel like this one was kind of more. I'm thinking mostly about the first two fights. So like in Stormblood it was Lakshmi and Susano,
right.
And at the start of Shadowbringers it was Innocence and Titania. I feel like this expansion was kind of more active for you than the other one, because I remember like Susano, it feels almost like they wanted to make it or sorry, not Susano, well I guess Susano's included, but Stormblood, like they kind of wanted to make it like almost more cinematic, I guess. And like movie like, because you have stuff like the giant sword in Susano, and then like the dancing thing, like for the cutscene in Lakshmi.
Yeah.
But in this one, I feel like there was less like cutscene type stuff, and there was just more like action throughout
more
the
gameplay,
fight.
right? I actually, yeah, I agree with you on that. I definitely do prefer Innocence and Titania, especially when you get these fights in your trial roulette, right? You know, when I get these fights in my trial roulette, I'm like, oh, Lakshmi, this shit is kind of boring, because all you're really doing is just dodging AoE and using the duty action when you're prompted to.
Yeah, oh yeah, the duty action too. There wasn't any of that in Shadowbringers. Was there? Was there any duty action like any of the extremes?
I don't think so, actually. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, because they tried to do that. I completely forgot about that. They had that in.
They also had that in some Omega fights too, with the duty action.
Yeah, that was a thing they tried. I know they brought it back in Shadowbringers for like some of the, like the story
for MSQ. Yeah, it was very good in the MSQ usage. Yeah, I go with that.
Yeah,
but I definitely do. Looking back on it now, it's like, wow, because, well, I think another aspect to it too is that you kind of see the difficulty of the fights kind of got bumped a bit when you think about it, because in Susano, Tank Buster aside, and this untelegraphed, by the way, it's very straightforward. At least to me as a player, it was very straightforward. You just dodge the telegraphs, make sure you stack, keep the tank alive / hold the tank, use the mitigation, and you also have the LB3 usage too there. Whereas if you compare it to Titania, there's a lot more going on, right? There was the 4 puddles that spawn as if you don't stand in them, AoE markers, tank busters that cleave too, the tank buster cleaves, and so that so some people might
the brambles.
The brambles as well. There was also the DPS checks on the ads that spawn, the enrages. There was also the thing in the middle where it's like you have to stand in the puddles to get the water resists.
Oh yeah, for the fire. That they would drop on. Yeah.
And I remember that if you fucked up the mechanic, what would happen is that the whole field would get covered in fire, and it would probably kill someone.
Yeah.
So and then if you go into Innocence too, well, not even think about the extreme version, just the normal version. It was like there's DPS check on some ads that spawn, Tank Buster, I believe. A lot of AoE, the mechanic where he would shoot the arrows out and then they come back in the same direction, but when they come back, it's not telegraphed, so you got to make sure you stand in the same place. So I think part of what makes them like ramp up the difficulty is that we gave these players so many tools at level 80 that they now have to both learn how to use those tools and recognize that we're going to be throwing things at them that force them to have to use these tools if they want to survive, I think, is how that works. And I think personally for me it's a fine approach, because especially since they were talking about just the growth of FF, they need to start thinking about things and ways that they can do to increase the overall average skill level of a player, especially when they get into like these higher content level 80. You kind of even see that same philosophy in the Alliance raids too, right? You can compare the Near raids to the Stormblood raids.
Yeah, it's like a lot more active in some of these raids, and there's a lot more. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more like almost separate mechanics going on, just like all over the place. Like I know like the big one for me in the Near raids is that one. I can't remember which Near raid it is. I think it's the last one, but the one where, each group has to tank their own like flyer dude, and then they'll cleave like different sides.
Oh no, that was the second one. That was Puppet's bunker.
Oh yeah,
I know what you're talking about though. That I like that fight, because it has each alliance doing one ad, and then you have to be aware of the attacks the other ads do. I definitely like the design of those fights, especially in the little kind of mini game-ish portions that they had. Like, remember the part where you walking down the long corridor and the lasers are coming out and along with the orbs, and you have to dodge both the lasers and the orbs while you're going down. I like that.
Yeah, that was pretty good too. So, yeah, I mean, I think almost they're starting to get to the point because I mentioned before that Stormblood was more cinematic, but I feel like they're getting really good at meshing the cinematics with the actual gameplay now instead of just forcing you to like watch something. They're like actually trying to put it in while you're playing too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So I hope.
and then you know, there's also the fact that they listen to the feedback from the players too, right? Because I can imagine a whole bunch of people must have complained about the cutscenes in E8S and E12S because as much as I love the cutscenes, some stuff needs to be skipped, especially if you're progging it too. Because if you're progging, that means you're going to see it so many times, and you're just like, can we just get an option to let us skip it? If all I think that's something they should consider doing. Have an option to skip cutscenes and let it happen if all players opt in to skip the cutscenes. That's something that I wish that they did for main story roulette too.
Well, I think what they need to do, and I've been saying this for years, is they just need to, when it comes to like normal fights versus like savage fights or extreme fights, like
put the cutscenes only in normal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like unless that cutscene is like something like Susano, where it forces you to do a mechanic with the cutscene.
Well, you just disappeared.
Like, just don't. What'd you say?
You just disappeared from me. What? Your character just disappeared.
Oh.
Am I? Am I still there on your screen?
Oh, you know what it is? I think it's because I don't they have like that timeout thing right now? I don't have my controller plugged in, so I didn't move it all.
I wasn't moving my thing either. It should. I don't think it should work because we were like emoting.
I don't know.
That's funny. You could log back in.
Yeah, I was looking. But what was I talking about? I forgot.
You're talking about the cutscenes and that they should probably just only keep it in normal and not in savage, and I kind of agree with that too.
Because I know,
or at the very least, if they do keep it in savage, what they should do is that they should make it one of those cutscenes where it's more. You can control your character. Like an example I could come up with is if you're doing Omega 8S against Kefka, and when you go into the transition, you see Kefka transform and all that stuff, but you're still able to move around. I think that's fine. Yeah,
and that's another good point too. Is there's like good transitions and then there's like bad transitions because like Kefka's one, and another one is like with Exdeath going into Neo Exdeath.
Yeah,
like
that was cool.
He has not only is it cool, but when he comes, like it only takes him like probably 20-30 seconds to go through that like transition into a second phase. And for one thing, that's like him and Kefka are both phase changes to like the second part, right? So I mean, I guess I don't know, because I say that, but now that I think about it, the only reason they're even like that is because they have that checkpoint.
Oh, because the door bosses, right?
The only reason. So I was gonna know if I should continue down that road.
Well, but what is your opinion on door bosses? Do you like them? Do you hate them?
I don't like them. I'm not the biggest fan. I feel like I don't know. I personally
speak your mind.
I mean, personally, for one thing, maybe it's just the ultimate speaking, but I like it when you continuously do a harder fight. I don't like it when you split it up, and I think it's really annoying for Prog too, because you have to just learn two different fights, and once, like, the really annoying thing is when it's like the first week that you beat the door boss, right? And you get to the point where you're like, hey, we finally made it to the second one, but there's only like 10 minutes left in the Shrieking Instance.
Oh,
so
right.
you
That's
make
a good
it.
point. That's a good point you make.
You make it to the checkpoint, and it's like, okay, well, we can get some pulls. And I mean, obviously, I'm exaggerating with the 10 minutes. Like, you might have like an hour or whatever. But my point is, you have to go back through the door boss every single time.
Right, and then
beat the boss.
That, even though you went through the first time, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to go through them again as fast or even faster.
So it's just
you mentioned
like
that a lot when it came to your ultimate clears, and how I was like, oh, did you ever consider trying to reclear? And then you're just like, you're right.
Well, ultimate is a different beast, because I mean, even though I like ultimate, the thing with ultimate is just it's almost like the opposite, because at least with
Well,
with
yeah, because you're basically looking at it like one fight is designed to be something you do maybe once or a few times, and the other fight is something that's designed for you to do like every week.
Yeah. Well, the big difference is just like the time factor that you spent doing mechanics, because like let's say you get to a door boss, right? Or you get through a door boss and you get to the second phase, and you go through the second phase and you're progging whatever, and you get like 5 minutes in and you wipe. Well, you only lost like 5 minutes of your time. At most that fight's probably only going to be like, I think with the door bosses they usually only make them like 8 or 9 minutes, something like that, like max. So it's not that bad when you wipe, but like when you wipe on an ultimate, like there's nothing worse than wiping like 13 minutes into a fight that took all your mechanical knowledge, and then you got to go all the way back. Like, it can be pretty rough. Now, personally, I like that better than the door bosses. I think it's more fun and it's more engaging, but it can wear down on you when you do it like over and over again, especially when people get to the very end and then someone messes up one thing and you just wasted like 15 minutes. So I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just hope that they make them fun. Like my biggest thing is I like to do like random stuff in Party Finder. I like to join like practice parties, like clear parties. I love getting people like first clears on stuff, especially when they're like, they can get the clear, but they just need like one or two people to come in there that can actually like help them. Like I love doing those type of parties, but like when the fights are just not very fun, I don't like doing it. So I just hope the fights are fun.
So this all comes down to just how well designed the fight is and how much it actually engages with you in terms of just doing it repeatedly over and over again, especially with newer players who don't know as much and are still trying to learn everything.
Yeah. So
it's pretty great to see how the content changes over time and how you can kind of look back on it and think about was this better than the other thing? Did they learn from this and make this better type of situation? Because that I feel like that's something that people are going to end up doing when Endwalker comes around, is that they're going to be looking at the trials and the raids and all the fights and the dungeons and be like, was this better than Shadowbringers? Was Shadowbringers better than this? Because like we're going to be doing that in our heads, right? Because even now we do it to this day, where you have people going, Stormblood is bad, Heaven's Ward the best. Shadowbringers came out. Shadowbringers the best. Everything about it is so good. Shadowbringers and Heaven's Ward, so good. Fuck Stormblood, and it's gonna like. Granted, even though they're doing all that from a main story point of view of how they felt about the writing, at the end of the day, we're gonna be thinking about the emotions we felt, how much fun we had, and above all, just how engaging all the new and different things we're going to get. And that kind of makes me wonder about the future for FF14 when you think about it, right? Because this game has been out since 2013. As we can clearly see, they're basically going to the limits of what the technology can do for them right now, especially on this engine as well, right? Do you ever think that they'll find themselves in a position where they go, we need to abandon this and do something that allows us to do even more? Or do you think they're fine with the tools that they have because they're getting to that point where they're perfecting everything and they can go, even though everything in this game is dated in some ways? You see that more so with the clipping on some outfits and glamours and all that stuff, and how limited some customization is for like certain races like the Viera and Harger. Do they think that they're confident enough to go, we can keep going with what we have as long as we keep focusing on what makes us the players happy, right? Because I feel like this is something you kind of see a bit in WoW, where WoW is 15 years old, so it's been around since 2006, and you kind of see how much I should say how much limited they are because they're dealing with tech from 2006 compared to us,
Yeah.
where our stuff is a bit more current, you know.
I don't. That's a really interesting question, actually. I don't know, to be honest.
No, yeah, it's fine if you don't know, you know.
Yeah, I want to say that they'll stay on this type of game though. Like I don't see them like, making like an updated 14 and being like, okay, guys, come to this, or like we can swap you over. Unless like I don't see them doing that unless they can somehow make it like completely seamless. Like it's just a swap over or something. Like I don't see them doing that because honestly, I feel like like you said, I feel like they're perfecting stuff and they're getting really creative with things that I never thought they would have been able to do before. Like I remember when I first started playing this game in Heavensward, I never thought I would be able to see something like the Neo X Death transition where he like breaks out of the barrier in the screen. Like I didn't think that was something this game would, be able to do, like, so I feel like they're I don't know. I feel like they're creative enough to keep this going like this. I could be wrong. And they might need to upgrade stuff. But I feel like another thing too is I feel like they're so successful at this point that there might be like, I feel like if they were gonna do it soon, they would have like, what's the word I'm looking for? They would have like done it. Yeah, they would have like leaned into it more. But I feel like they're putting like more and more stuff into this version that is like kind of groundbreaking stuff. Like how they did, Cross World Party Finder and stuff. And then they moved from Cross World Party Finder to like now they're doing like cross like data center stuff.
Do you think that type of stuff, right? Do you think that was outside your scope? Because to me that sounds like something that should have been a thing from the beginning, but I think they didn't do it from the beginning because of how much time it would take, and they were unsure of how many people would be playing, right? I think that was my initial perspective on that, just because I look at games today where when it comes to multiplayer, very rarely do you ever play a game where you're region locked or locked to a server when it comes to multiplayer. Usually they just go, oh, you can jump to this server to play with that person, or in some places it's just global and then it doesn't matter like if you're playing an FPS. So yeah, to me, I think that with them it was just once they saw that they were doing good, they were like, okay, we can actually do this now, because if we do this, it's going to make things better for us in the long run, because we're going to be like, hey, my buddy from Crystal, come play with me. Keep subbing. Yeah. We're going to be playing together, buddy. Like, that's the thing. And then it's going to be even better for people that, haven't even played yet, right? Where they go, oh, shit, my friends are in different worlds and I can play with them. All right, I'm a sub too, Like, yeah. These are the things that give that positive growth for them and, make us have more fun. Because, no one wants to be in a situation where they can't play with friends of theirs, right? Because that's how I feel all the time, where I see a whole bunch of my friends on Primal and I'm like, I really, really want to play with y'all, with my main especially. But like after playing on Primal on an alt, I need you to know right now, those people on Primal, they need to learn from Aether. Because I've seen way too many messed up mechanics. They gotta do better. They gotta do better. And another thing I noticed too is the player population, because when I was queuing up for stuff as a DPS on Primal, I would say it was at least twice the queue time of my DPS times on Aether. I thought that was very interesting.
I haven't really played. I've never played on anything besides Aether before, so I actually don't really have any experience.
I'm just letting you know that now from when I was playing on that, because that was something that was very noticeable for me.
But yeah, going back to the thing about the
future,
whether
right?
or not they'll yes, but that's one of the things I was saying is for like the cross world stuff. I feel like if they were planning to go to like a different version, I feel like they wouldn't have even like bothered doing that on this version.
Squish, you mean?
Well, no, like the cross data center
Oh,
stuff.
the cross.
I
Okay,
feel
I
like
see.
I feel like they would have just implemented that into a new game or a new version of Final Fantasy 14 and just went with that whenever they wanted to implement it. But it seems like they're just trying to push this version as far as it can go. So I guess that's kind of my thought process. But I could be wrong. They could have another 14 in the back burner, like right after Endwalker. I don't know.
That is true. I saw a little theory that someone told me about where they were saying that because we're gonna eventually delve into the origins of Omega and Midgar Somer, this person told me that what they think is gonna happen is that we're gonna have a Final Fantasy 14-2. But the thing about it is it's gonna connect to the base game in story, but it'll be on a whole different server and infrastructure, so that if you go to 14.2, you can import your character settings so that you have the same appearance, but it'll be on a whole new engine, and you're gonna be interacting in different areas that are exclusive only to 14.2. And that the reason they're gonna do this is because they're gonna make it so that if you want to visit the planet Hydaelyn, you just play regular Final Fantasy 14, and if you want to visit outside of Hydaelyn, well, I should say not even outside Hydaelyn, just outside the moon's range, you're gonna have to go on 14.2.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I was saying earlier too. Is I don't see them doing it unless they can do something like that where it's like a seamless transition. Unless it's like a seamless transition.
No one wants to be in a situation where they lose their stuff, right? No one wants to lose their stuff. That's the hard thing about games like this, is that if you want to do stuff like make a new engine, you need to find a way to do it that retains people's stuff. Otherwise, people are going to be like, I farmed for all this for nothing then if I don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
No one ever wants to create a situation where you make someone regret the time that they invested into the game.
Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of like, I think personally they'll like I said, I think they'll stay on this unless they can do something like what that idea is, where they can make it like a seamless transition to the next version. One thing I wanted to bring up, and this is going back like to the start of our conversation, but I wanted to bring up what are your thoughts about like the sky in general in 14? And what I mean by this is for one thing, we've all seen the Warrior of Light on the moon without like space gear, and we've seen the Ascians on the moon without space gear. And another thing that we've also encountered in 14 is like stuff like the Sea of Clouds, where we haven't really needed like any gear specifically for going up higher altitudes. So do you think like the air just operates like the same in general, like everywhere, or what do you think is up with that? That's something I can thought about.
One thing I noticed, and I think this is the big thing. Well, in the case of the Ascians, they basically don't care about oxygen because they don't die. So I think that's why they're just okay doing their own thing. But one thing to notice, you probably forgot about this because it was so long ago, but back in post Heaven's Ward, we saw Arbor on the moon back when he said he was a warrior of darkness. The fact that he can breathe on the moon makes me think that Hydaelyn grants us her protection to breathe on the moon.
Well, going off of that, then. So do you think it's only us?
Yep, only us. I don't think the Scions can come. It's just us only adventure. Like it's either
it's possible.
It's either that or it's gonna be something similar to how we're able to breathe underwater, where we just get like a blessing of some kind that lets us, breathe. But I think it's just gonna be just a Hydaelyn only kind of thing that allow us to do that.
Yeah. The reason why I thought about that again is because earlier we were talking about like space travel and stuff.
Yeah, that is the thing, right? Because I'm trying to figure out, are we going to go to the moon in a rocket? Because if that's the case, it's kind of possible when you think about it. You wonder what's going to happen? They're going to have Sid say, I just found a fucking Allegan spaceship just chilling in a ruin somewhere. I can boot it up for you and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's either that, or we're going to somehow be able to use an Aetherite to send us to the moon. It's either one of those two things.
Yeah, that's pretty much the two theories I heard. I've heard either there's going to be like some type of teleportation device, or there's going to be, because like on the Endwalker like title screen, like you see like that spaceship like that comes into motion, but I don't know if that's what we're going to use or what, or like how we get there. But
another reason why I think about an Aetherite is because I think about in terms of the context of the fact that we're probably going to have mad shit to do on the moon, so we're gonna have to travel there, and it's like, okay, do you want us to use the Aetherite to teleport there for, you know, fast travel purposes, or are you gonna want us to just keep clicking on some shit to bring us up there every time we have to go up there, you know?
Yeah, we had to go to Sid's lab every single time to go ride the spaceship.
Kind of like how, if you remember when you're doing the Eden story, you know how you have to click on that little thing to teleport us inside of Eden?
Oh yeah.
you couldn't even teleport to that location. You had to go to the town before it and take the skitter across. They might do the same shit.
Yeah, I mean they could, but I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to me to think about what, like how the sky in general works in 14, and if it works like anything like our actual sky does,
right?
Or if oxygen is like, does it even matter for people?
Because it's funny you mentioned the sky, because another thing that people often overlook was how, you remember the part where we take the eyes off of Estinian and we throw them into a quote-unquote sea of ether that was like in that drench, and it's like, is that something that just occurs naturally, or...
Yeah,
you know, because it kind of shows just how much of an impact that just Aether has on the world in general, both in terms of just how it could, you know, change people, right? Like in the case of the Sin Eaters, where you have people become Sin Eaters because their whole Aether equilibrium got changed. And I think that's kind of what happened with Estinian and Nidhogg, is that Nidhogg fucked with Estinian's Aether and turned him into himself with it. It's like it's like stuff like that we know now because of what we learned about tempering. Because before I was just going, what the fuck? How did he turn into Nidhogg? Was what I was going. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what do you mean he holds both of his eyes and he turns into him? But now it makes more sense, because remember, the eyes were a reservoir of ether, so that means that the ether from the eyes is fucking with his own ether. Which makes a lot more sense now in retrospect when you look at that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy.
Oh, you want to know another thing that also makes more sense in retrospect too? Have you ever done the Scholar quest line?
Yes, but do I remember it? Probably not.
Did you read it or no?
I don't remember.
All right, so just to sum up for you, basically, you know, in that one dungeon where you fight the Tomberries?
Yeah.
The Tomberries are actually people.
I think I knew that.
And the people got turned into Tomberries because of a voice sent. And the reason why is because the voice sent fuck with their ether. And you see what I mean, right? It's like shit like that makes sense in retrospect, because instead of it going, how the hell did they turn them into that? And then we go, oh, and that's because of what we learned about tempering. We see now that they were able to do that because of the fucking changing their ether, which makes me wonder if changing their ether can change them back from a Tomberry, you know, because this is one thing I hate, where it's like the quest lines is just your warrior of light doing shit that the Skylands know nothing about. I just wish we could go, Alice, say, this guy is literally used to be a person, can you help him please? Like shit like that. It's like he literally he's trying to find a cure, can you just help us out please?
I mean it should be possible. I feel like, especially now that we figured out stuff with untempering, I feel like you should be able to change it back if you know, I guess, what they're, maybe if you go off like the base, what a person's Aether is supposed to be like. I don't know. Like
Well,
they're
the way
like
it
a
works is that they go ether. Our ether is supposed to be in equilibrium, but what happens
mm,
that changes us is that our equilibrium gets shifted into a certain direction. You kind of see more about this when you meet Oriange and Ilmig, and he shows you that chart that's like, oh, these three elements are umbral line, these three elements are astral line, and then when the balance is
mm,
fucked, all crazy shit happens.
yeah.
And it's pretty cool though. But we are out of time though. I have approached my 1 hour with you, but it has been very fun just having these last minute thoughts just airing out, before we go into maintenance and go into the real thick of just what Endwalker has in store for both us, for all the players, and also for just the future of Final Fantasy XIV itself. It's going to be pretty crazy, especially for me. This is going to be my first time continuing to play the game during an expansion, because I was on and off with Stormblood, but now it's just going to be like, wow, I'm really going to be there in the trenches with everyone else at the start, just trying to figure out how these bosses work, trying to get them clears, trying to just have all the fun we can have.
Just get ready to line up for Railbon Extreme Ultimate Edition.
I am ready because I have a night shift, so unless I'm playing on the weekend, I'm going to be playing that shit at midnight. Hopefully, I don't see a shit ton of people playing at midnight. But yeah, take care, man. It was nice speaking with you. Hopefully, we can get you again after we eventually do Endwalker and finish the MSQ, and then we can start talking about both what the MSQ had done for us, as well as just what we're going to be expecting from the future in the post patches once we see what that story has to offer. So it's nice speaking with you. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, same with you.